Consistency, right, creates production. So, way to go, guys. I love that you guys are on. So, you know, uh, we like to do, some formal training here and kind of pick some topics that Jeff and I think are really important, especially, for new agents, but all of us to reminded, with experience too, that we need to keep moving forward and fine tuning our skills. But Jeff and I, a few months ago, decided it'd be really great to have just a Q&A maybe once every 5, 6 weeks, just to make sure that we're hitting on everyone's points and seeing what struggles that people might be having, and just really kind of on, obviously this meeting is all about real estate sales. So, buyers, sellers, conversions, and leads, and or even technology like SkySlope, or how to do certain things, how to get paid. So I just wanted to open it up for some Q&As. We do have a few good Q&As or questions already. So I can jump into a couple of those, and then we can open it up afterwards as well. So, hey, Lynn.
Hey.
You haven't had a busy day, have you?
I'm going to be here, and then I'll probably be lucky to leave here by 10.
If you only knew, Eric. Her life, man.
I got an idea. I got a little idea. Well, good deal. So first question that we got was, I think, an awesome question, was when you are at an open house and you have a buyer come into an open house that is not represented by another agent, and whether it's your listing or someone else's listing that you're working, is how do we convert just a buyer that you meet face to face for the very first time? How do you turn that into an actual buyer and a transaction in the near future? Because that's probably like the hottest prospect you'll ever get. We've talked about it before. Like when you talk about meeting somebody, if you meet them on the phone, it's really two-dimensional. But if you meet them in person, you have a much better chance to show your personality and really kind of win them over in your skill level and everything. So I asked Lynn to help out on this one a little bit, because she's had some really awesome success of having open houses and converting those into buyers. And it's when you have a listing and you can grab an additional buyer out of that listing, home run, right? I mean, that is just like, I am like way in the green at that point, So thanks, Lynn, for jumping on and sharing some wisdom. I have some thoughts on it too, but if you want to jump in, I know you're busy and you got things that you need to work on. So thanks for jumping in, help us out. So
absolutely.
Maybe tell your story of like the last couple, maybe that you had that have converted into buyers on your open house, and kind of your thoughts on how that happened.
I just literally hit the jackpot on the last one. The last one where I converted to $600,000 buyers at one open house. I was lucky enough that the house was spread out enough that we had, people could be in different pockets and be walking through the house. And so I was able to like talk to people. That's the thing, is if it's a smaller home and you've got multiple people going through and you can't really grasp onto people and talk to people, that's when it's tough. But when they kind of sporadically come, then it's a lot easier, because then you can, what I try to do is I just try to talk to them. I don't try to push to see if they, I obviously ask them if they have an agent, but I always look at my check-in sheet. And if they say that they don't, then obviously, I just start conversation. And I feel like a lot of people are attracted to someone that cares about what they want, not an agent that only just wants to talk about themselves and what great experience they have, that kind of thing. But how you look out for your clients. I do talk about the experience that I have, so that they know that when I do walk through a house with them, I am actually pointing out things to them that I think they should know or learn or see. And so in just talking about those things, you can actually even sometimes convert someone that says they have an agent that really doesn't have an agent, that really does want to talk to you, because they're like, oh, wow, so you're not just going to push me to buy a house and tell me how cute my family's going to be at the kitchen table. You're actually going to show me, you know, what I'm buying and teach me. And so,
So it's a lot like when you're showing your buyers a house, kind of just do the same thing.
yeah, I mean, obviously I'm in my open house, so I can't be pointing out things that are wrong with that house. But when in my conversation, I talk about that, I feel like that would be a disservice to my seller if it's my open house and my, you know, if I'm doing an open house on someone else's house, maybe I could point out issues and things like that. But when it's my seller, I don't feel like I could do that. I can point out, you know, things like you can tell that there used to be a wall here, and just show them the things that I understand about the house and help them that way, because some people just don't talk about that perspective. But with those two leads, I feel like the reason why I was able to, one of them I was specifically able to get because I had my iPad there and I was able to actually walk through houses with her. I said, so this house doesn't, what do you think about this house? Well, you know what, it's too choppy, I don't really like it. Well, what do you like? Let's get on, you know, let's get on the MLS and let's look at what you do like. And she absolutely loved that. And then the other one, I think we just really connected because I just talked to her. I wasn't trying to push myself on her. I just talked to her, asked her how her showing, you know, how her showings were going. And she had actually gone to a ton of open houses and she had met a ton of agents, but she chose me. And that was huge for me. And then I had another one that was super successful at, I think it was a listing Jeff had a few years ago. It was a $600,000 listing. And I remember people just, some of the, I mean, 600,000 back then was like 850,000 now. I mean, that same house was like almost 900,000. People were just really snooty and they were just really pushing me off, you know? And so what I did was I actually just started talking to people just nicely and not acting like a pushy agent. And once you just start talking and you're finding out what they want, if they don't have an agent, they like the fact that you're letting them talk. You know, you're not pushing yourself again on them. And I remember specifically him saying to me, he's like, wow, I really think I could work with you, you know? And I remember when we signed the buyer broker, it was like, okay, let's just do one property on the buyer broker just in case, you know, this doesn't go the way I want it to. And by the time we did our second buyer broker, you know, he did it for any property that we found. And so it's just you showing value. And so in an open house, it's, you know, like Audrey's talked to us quite a bit about open houses. She's out there really doing it. And she's connecting with people. So what she's doing is she's trying to build rapport. And that's the biggest thing, is just build rapport. Let them know that you're different and how you're different. Because I'm different than Brenton. I'm different from Sydney. And so they have their attributes that will make them the best agent for the people that are really attracted to them. Not everyone's going to like you or want to work with you, because you might have, you know, I have blonde hair, maybe they don't like it. You know, so you just got to find the people that actually connect with you. That's
I think what you're pretty much just saying is you're just being personable. You're just like, you're not trying to be an agent. You're just like socializing with them like you would anybody else, getting to know them. I like to ask a couple of leading questions and just ask them how long they've been looking, where are they finding the properties they're looking at, what's their experience been like so far. And that just kind of like leads into either frustration or something that you can then talk about. It's really hard to plan, oh, I'm going to say this, and then I'm going to say this, and I'm going to say this. The reason she's so good is it's just like, she's just meeting somebody and she's like, you know, how you doing? She keeps saying, be personable. I think she's successful because she doesn't overthink it.
So my last open house the last one had a ton of people in it. Everybody had an agent. And so I still started talking to people and starting conversation because I wanted to know about their agent. How's your agent? You know, and I even had, you know, some people tell me, oh, my agent's really frustrated with her brokerage, you know? And so I actually, because they already had an agent, so then I tried to figure out information about their agent, because obviously I want to meet more agents. And so I actually got some leads that way for EXP. I mean, just always be looking outside of the box, because even though there's no opportunity in getting yourself a buyer, an agent is worth more than a buyer to me. That sees EXP and can actually be an owner and start sharing in this stock ownership that I'm loving so much.
Oh my gosh, have you guys seen the stock price? Woo-wee.
And I'm feeling rich right now. I just feel so blessed.
It's crazy
really
how fast
do.
it's gone up in the last couple of weeks.
Yeah.
One thing I know she said, Lynn, was how do you like this house? Do you like this house? And one thing that I've struggled with, I'm interested in know what your two perspectives are, is when I'm showing my own listing, I want to figure out if this house, if they don't have an agent and I'm showing my own listing, and I'm trying to figure out, is this house just not a fit for you at all? Because then I could show them something else. And that's such a hard transition because you're trying to sell this house for your seller. So I don't want to have them walk in the front door and say, hey, welcome to my listing. Here's a list of 7 other homes just like it. You know, what house are you trying to sell here? That's not a service to your seller. So how do you manage that transition of, you know, kind of finding out if this house is even a possibility for them to make that switch, or not necessarily a switch, but just that you're open to help them find another house too?
Well, for me, I kind of let them look at the house, and then I pay attention to their body language and how they're acting. And you can obviously tell when someone is kind of feeling it, you know, yeah, I like this or that. And, but I will definitely, that's when I'll say, well, what do you think of it? You know, did the sellers do a good job getting it ready? I always ask that. Do you feel like the sellers did a good job getting the house ready? And then they'll be, yeah, I think they did a really good job. Well, how do you think about the price? Well, my first question is obviously, how did you see this open house? Because then my agent sent it to me. I was just driving by. So that could be someone I could get pre-qualified. Or I just saw it on, you know, KSL or something like that. So that's my very first question when they walk in is how'd you find out about the open house? And then that tells me a little bit about, you know, about kind of where they came from. And then, yeah, while they're looking at the house or after they're about ready to leave or something, I always try to catch them and I try to ask them questions. Now, if they have an agent and they're just don't even want to even have eye contact, I'm not going to push myself in front of someone that doesn't want to have eye contact with me. I'm just not that person.
But no matter what the potential buyer is, whether they're represented or not, what you're getting at, Eric, is you're asking them feedback questions.
Yes.
What did you like and what didn't you like?
Mm-hmm.
I would love to give the feedback to my seller. If you're doing an open house on your own listing, you can ask that of anybody. And then again, that's maybe another lead thing into, well, you know, the house doesn't suit their needs for this. Maybe the garage was too small. Maybe the master bedroom won't fit their furniture, or the walk-in closet wasn't big enough, all of those kind of things. And then depending on if they're working with somebody else or not, then that leads to, would you like to see if there's any available in this area? And I like that Lynn takes her iPad and pulls it up. I don't do that. She does most of our open houses now, but when I did them, I never took the computer and said, well, let's just look real quick and see what's in the nearby.
You never know. I mean,
if they've already checked out from that house,
yeah,
right?
They're already out there. And what if they've never really had someone help them through the process? You never know. A lot of people are just looking on the internet, and that is so, I don't know what it's like in Oregon, but I'll tell you what, here, if I'm looking just on the internet to try to find, let's say, a for sale by owner, because I'm really frustrated with what's on the MLS, I can't figure out what's what, you know, because there's all of these crazy ads out there that real estate agents are putting out there to get leads. And so I don't even know how they don't get lost. And then if they do push a button to say they want to see a house, then they're getting phone call after phone call. So they're scared to do that. So I think showing them the process of what it's like to have a really good agent that says, okay, let's isolate what you want. I had the one girl on Hot Sheets before she left. Hot Sheets are our property lists. And so that was awesome. I mean, that was a awesome one because her husband was an engineer. And when someone is an engineer, I always feel like it's a real win because I just feel like they shop everything and they don't want to pay real estate commissions ever. They really do. They shop everything. So that was really fun. But I don't know. How was that, Eric?
It was awesome. I loved it. Yes.
I will tell you on open houses, don't do an open house where everybody speaks a different language than you, because that's not successful.
That makes sense.
I did that.
I have a question about open houses. So they fill out the little card when they come in with their name, their address, whether they have an agent or not. How do you feel when they're like, oh, I don't want to fill this out because I don't want you to bug me? I actually had somebody say that to me before. So what's your thoughts on that?
I can tell you what I do. I don't do a little card. I do a sign-in sheet, and the sign-in sheet says their name, phone number. I think it has a place for email, and then also whether they're working with an agent or not, and then what their agent's name is. And I say it's for the seller. So the seller can see who's gone through their house, and that way.
You have no way of quickly verifying if they're giving you the right email address or not, or if they're just putting down their initials at gmail.com or whatever. Most people will fill it out. I don't think I've ever had anybody say I wouldn't fill it out, but
I'm not going to say that I get everyone to do it, Kim, because there's some people that if they're unapproachable, I don't try to force myself in and get the information from them. I usually do it with people that I feel, want to be talked to and are open to talk. Just don't ever force myself. If they want to just walk through and don't want to even look at me, that's fine. Just go ahead, look, let me know if you have any questions. And I don't even ask them to fill it out.
I usually say, ask them to fill it out for security purposes for the seller.
That's a good one.
Like that.
Pardon me?
This is a good one, Sherry.
Yeah, I just say, I would please fill this out. It's for security for the seller. They want to know who's been through their house.
And put your thumbprint next to it.
Yeah, and I'm taking your picture and running an ID and all of the above. Fill this out, damn it.
She's like body checking with the door. You ain't coming in. That's great, Sherry.
You should see my open houses now with the coronavirus. I have a sign right out front that says this, the steps to enter the house. They have to ring the doorbell. I have masks sitting there just because I was one of the first real estate agents to open up open houses, and everybody kept saying, you're going to get somebody sick, and so I just took all the caution that I could, but I think people's really appreciate it. I only let one group in at a time. And then if somebody pulls up and I go out on the step and just say, I can only let one group in at a time. And when you see them leave, just give me a few minutes because I have to sanitize. And I go and wipe everything down. And I think people's really appreciated it though. And it's sold. The dang thing's sold.
That's awesome. Well, thank you, everybody. Thanks, Lynn and Sherry. That was fantastic. One thing that I do like to ask too, depending on the buyer, sometimes you can get kind of a feel of if they've been around and maybe they've looked at other homes before, or they've purchased other homes. I like to ask them if it's their first home purchase, because when you're in the industry, you kind of get used to thinking everybody already knows what you know and how a buyer's agent works. But isn't it surprising to you when you talk to a buyer and they say, well, I don't have to pay you. There's no cost for your service. You're like, I thought everybody knew that, right? It's because you are living in the industry. Not everyone knows that. So if I'm in a entry-level home and maybe I have a younger couple come in, that will be one of the first few questions I ask is just say, so is this your first home? Or are you looking to, move up, or, where are you moving from? And that way I know that if it's their first home, there may be some things they don't know about using a buyer's agent that I can share with them. That's one thing that I add too.
I love that question because I always try to get to that, being able to ask them if they understand how the buying process works. And I'll just kind of like naively say, I'm just curious, you said you've been looking for a little while, you've, seen a half a dozen homes, you've been looking on Zillow or whatever. Why aren't you using a real estate agent? I just ask them why they don't have somebody helping them in the process to see what they say. And that's kind of a big tell because, oh, I can do it on my own. Or if they've already expressed that they're frustrated, I always kind of lead into that commission conversation too. Oh, just to make sure you understand. And if they've already bought a couple of homes or they've never bought a home, it's kind of the same thing. If they've never bought a home, oh, just so you know how it works. Or if they bought a couple of homes, oh, you probably remember that you don't have to pay the buyer's commission. You agree on a purchase price, whatever you're willing to pay for the home, and the buyer's agent's commission is covered in that, right? You remember that from the previous ones. And sometimes they still didn't get it. And that's a good lead in.
Fantastic. Awesome. Well, I think we covered that. Thanks so much, Lynn. I know you're busy. You can hang out if you like, but I appreciate you jumping on.
Hey, no problem. I got an offer to write.
Yeah. Keep not hanging around, guys. See ya.
I got to get it accepted.
Thanks for coming
as soon as possible. What's this happening?
I'll deal with it after.
Okay.
Thank you.
Hey, I really missed your faces.
You're the best.
Yeah. I wish we were all together.
Yeah, we got to get live again.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, you
Okay.
can
All right.
Get out of here.
go. My phone anyway.
So next question, actually kind of similar, was how do you, Jeff, convert a cold lead into a warm lead? And I know that you work a lot with SOI. So
I was just about to say, why are you asking me that?
But it's kind of the same similar, conversation that we just had. What I always try to do, and it's really challenging over the phone, but if you have a cold lead over the phone, maybe you're calling back on a property boost. I always remember that when you are in person, you can see facial expressions, you can see gestures, but you can't see that on the phone. So always, if you're calling somebody, stand up and be extra, like whatever your normal volume is, your normal excitement level, just turn it up a little bit because they can't see your gestures or your facial expression. So kind of build that up, because the whole goal of being on a new phone call is you kind of have that, you only have that one chance to make a first impression. So the whole goal is to quickly build rapport and create trust quickly. And the way you build rapport is really by just voice inflection and mirroring and kind of matching their personality if you can. And then trust is just showing that you're the expert and that you're knowledgeable what they're calling about. So those are the two things that I do over the phone.
I'm glad you said that last part, because Sydney will remember this, because we just recently went on a listing appointment and went and took a buyer out to show a property to. And one of the things we were talking about is I always just act as if they're already my client. I don't try and do any pre-sell or explanation or anything. I just get right into it. And I just say, okay, this is how we're going to start. The first thing we got to do is get you set up on hot sheets, provided they've already been pre-qualified or whatever. And I just start ripping through what we're going to do first. And when we go on a listing appointment, like we did with Sid, we just walk in and we just start talking about getting to business. The first thing we got to do is go through the house. So let's walk around the house. We're going to help you get it ready because, and I tell them my process, and just so you guys know, you've heard it before, I like to list on Thursday afternoons. I just get the most views of my properties Friday afternoon and Saturday when those hot sheets reset. So I just start telling them that. And then I back it up. So what that means is I got to schedule professional photography for Tuesday or Wednesday. And if we're doing a 3D tour, we got to do that. So that means the house has to be show ready. And then we walk through the house and we're just kind of going into it as if we're just scheduling. I'll sometimes even pick up my phone and I'll call Courtney and schedule a design consult, see when she's open. I'll call Zach and order photography while we're there at the listing appointment, just as if they're going to hire me. I just don't really kind of give them an out.
I like that. So I had this discussion with my broker 15 years ago, and he said I was crazy. Buyers, because I was 80% buyer's agent, and he's always would hammer, get the buyer agreement signed, because until you have a buyer's agreement, you have nothing. They're not your client. You can show them 20 houses, they're not your client. And I always said, back to them. If I get a buyer's agreement and they decide they don't want to work with me and it's not a fit, am I really going to force them to work with me and buy a house from me even when they don't really like me, or it isn't a good fit? Awkward. No, you're using me.
Oh no, we're going tonight and looking at houses, damn it.
You can wait till February if you want to buy a house with somebody. So I always had this feeling. It's like, you know what, I'm going to have them sign a buyer's agreement when I write my first offer with them, because I have to do it that way because I'm representing them in that offer. And so to back up a little bit, how do I get them to be my client before doing that is I always felt like if I can offer more than I'm asking, then I'm giving so much value. That question of me not being their agent will never come up. And I'm going to tell you, in 15 years, hi buddy. Sorry, my 8-year-old's waving at me. I got to be there for like 10 minutes.
You got to wave back.
But I feel like if I am going in and I'm trying to, get that buyer's agreement first before I give any value, then I'm kind of in a way devaluating what I'm doing. But I've always looked at it as like give before I'm asking for anything, and it never comes up. Like it's a natural flow. So I'm always wanting to set up the property, the search, the auto searches, the hot sheets, offer them to show them houses, and it never even comes up. And of course I explain the process of, like you mentioned, Jeff, that, the cost of using a buyer's agent and also the advantages, but I'm not asking them to sign anything right away. So that's
guys, listen to what he's saying. I mean, what you're saying right now, Eric, is pretty much a buyer's consult. You're saying the same thing to the buyer. Hey, this is the way I do business. I'm not going to ask you to sign a contract because we have to decide if we're a good match to work together. You both have to have that out, right? And so just like when I walk in a listing appointment, the first thing I tell them is I didn't bring any comps and I don't have a listing agreement with me. It's too early for that. We have to do boom, 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 boom. It's the same thing with the buyer, right? You're explaining to them, hey, this is the way I work. I want to make sure that we're a good fit and that you trust that I'm adding value to you. And boy, talk about a comfort, that weight, just kind of like, oh, and when it's not that they let their guard down, but they become more comfortable and they're more open with you, right? It's kind of like Lynn and I, when we first went on our first date, we both told each other we didn't want anything out of this. And so we opened up to each other all that much more, and we were married in like 5 months. So let down that guard.
I love it. Yeah. So yeah, that's I will say that I have been burned once by doing that, where I actually did show some houses to a buyer. I had a really good rapport. 3 weeks later, he ran into a for sale by owner and wrote it without me. And I couldn't get a hold of him for a few days. He says, yeah, I bought a house already. Sorry, Eric. And I thought, man, I can't believe that happened. But then I thought, so I actually lost a transaction because of the way I do that business. But then immediately I thought, how many transactions did I get because of the way that I've done business in the past and creating value before I do the offer? So I think I have gained a lot more clients, and then I've certainly lost from that approach.
What'll make you feel better is that transaction probably would have turned out twice as horrible as Brenton's. You're lucky you didn't stick with him.
It's funny how you remember those like that, though, right?
Yeah.
You lose one, and you're like, oh, I remember those.
Yeah.
But so yeah, does that answer your question, Britton? Thanks for sending that in, by the way. Appreciate it.
Yeah, that was great. Thank you.
And I think everything that Lynn said too about the open house applies to both really well. So
yeah, because I've been getting leads, but I don't know if it's because they're just poor leads or what, but I'm converting anything yet. That's why I asked,
So are you not engaging with them? Is that the problem? Or you're engaging, but you're not gaining traction?
So I'm working on my SOI, and most of my SOI is like mostly people are trying to, for some reason, trying to get manufactured homes. So that's a bad route to go. And then so I decided to go with another system. I'm working with OpCity, and then I also working with another company too, Schedule Set, and they send me leads. That's pre screen want to do business and blah blah blah, right? But I call them, no answer. I leave them a text message, no answer. With OpCity, their price range is like $80,000 or less with OpCity's referrals. So nothing really legitimate, you know. But I'm trying to still convert them, and I've had a couple people that I've scheduled and canceled or went to go show a place, and after I showed them a place, no response after that.
You know,
So I'm not sure what's happening.
Brenton, when I do that first showing, like if I meet a buyer for the very first time at a property they're interested in, always make sure that you have other properties that are similar to it in the area that you have information on. And you can offer that value right from that first appointment and say, I know we're coming to look at this house, but I see what you like and what you are interested in this house. So I wanted to pull up some other properties that were kind of similar, and maybe we can take a look at some of those or see if you have any questions on those and ask them, have you seen any of these properties before? So you're kind of getting them in the habit of, you're not just showing this house, you can show them any house, and you will show them any
But
house.
also what you're doing, Brenton, is when they want to go see one house, again, just start talking about the way you do things. Say, hey, the value of my time and your time, I like to see at least 3 homes when we go out. So do you mind me finding 2 more that are similar? And then you just start asking them the questions about their criteria. What was it about this house you liked? Why do you want to go see this one? So I can find a couple more that are similar, and I can open the door to any house. And so I'll schedule those at the same time. It's not going to take that much longer when you're already out to go see 2 more houses in the vicinity, right? But if they go see one at a time, I mean, that's one of the value propositions you offer them, even if you're meeting them at the open house, and that's what they're doing, is calling every seller and going and seeing either an open house or one seller or one selling agent at a time to open that door. You can say, I'll route them, I'll schedule them, we'll go boom, 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 boom. So that's a great way, and that should be just part of the way you do things. The only time I really go out and show one property is in a market like this, when we've already seen everything, right? We've already seen everything in their vicinity, their price range. Now they've either got to change their price or their geography. They got to move out in their parameters of where they're willing to live. Something's got to give, right? But if they're sticking to that, it's hot sheets. And we know we can't wait till there's 2 or 3 to show them. Because they're going to be gone. So that's the only early time I'm okay with going to showing them one, is they're already kind of, we're connected and it's hot, it's new, and we got to go get it and hopefully get under contract. But with a new one, just act as if that's just the way we do things, and they'll probably appreciate it.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Okay, because I think I'm pretty personable. I think I build rapport really well. I just, I'm trying to figure out that extra step that I need to take to kind of latch them on. So that's great. Thank you.
I got one other comment on the mobile home comment you made. You said, oh, that's not really where I want to be. You should be referring those people. I can send you the name of a contact information to a gal that all she does is mobile homes.
Really?
You don't have to work everybody, but you got to be that guy. You got to be that one that's going to help them out no matter what they want to do. If you don't want to do it, hook them up with somebody that does do that.
Right.
Dawn actually did a class for us at this office. She doesn't even have her license, but she's an investor, and she flips mobile homes and mobile home parks.
Okay.
And she finances them.
Really? Okay.
So if you got people looking at manufactured and stuff, just hook them up with somebody that'll take care of them.
Gotcha. Cool. Thank you.
Yeah, it's awesome. Great advice, Jeff. I love that. When another thing about building rapport, Brenton, is if I'm going to show 3 or 4 houses to one client, it's the first time out. If that first house that we look at has some negative issues to the house, I actually really like that, because that buyer's thinking they're just out to sell a house. I mean, they're just looking for a commission. But when I go to the first house or the second house and there's some issues with that home, and I can point out some things that I really don't like about this house. And, you know, I've even said this to new clients, and, you know, even if you were in love with this house, these are the reasons why I wouldn't buy it. I wouldn't recommend you purchase it. And I'll point out some of those flaws, and you'll know them when you see them, you know, because you look at some things that are expensive repairs, like roof, or, you know, like wood fascia soffit that's rotting all the way around the house, you know, or the expensive mechanical things like that. When you point those things out to a brand new buyer you're just first working with, their first thought is, I like this guy, you know, he's actually helping me see things that I am not aware of, or I would have missed. And that's a huge value, because people know what they like, but sometimes they don't see what's going to hurt them later.
Okay.
So.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Yeah. Well, anyone else have any questions? That's the mail-in questions I got. So do we have any live questions tonight?
I didn't get any text messages from my stuff I sent out, so.
I hope this is helpful. I mean, I think it's fun to kind of open up a little bit and
I have a question.
yeah.
Well, I guess it's more of a comment. So that for sale by homeowner that I was talking to y'all about, that I was kind of working and talking to the lady, I passed by it on Saturday, and she had a for sale sign in the yard by another realtor with the XP. And I'm like, dang it, why didn't I get this? And so I took it as an opportunity to kind of critique myself. And so I just wrote down a couple things that I could have done better. And one of them was to give her tips. I should have told her, hey, if this was me selling it and I was asking, you know, $450, I would have staged this. I would put some furniture in there. People can't visualize things without furniture being there, so you need to put some things. Also, it gives that warm feeling of the house. Anyway, I could have given her some tips, and I didn't do that. The other thing was, I don't think I followed up with her quite as often as I should have. And I think that may be another reason why she went with somebody else other than me. But I would love to take any feedback that you have. I mean, you worked with me on it, so any thoughts?
So did you look up the listing to see what she listed it at?
Well, it's in my neighborhood, and it was for sale. Oh no, I haven't looked yet. Now that it's on the MLS, I haven't looked, but I went over and met with her in person, and she was asking $450. And me and Eric ran some numbers, and that was really way too high for what she has. So, so I do need to go look and see what they have it listed for.
So I think we might have talked about this, but when it's listed too high like that, part of the offering the value is to let her know, you know, to let her know that and why, like you just said about the staging and what you would have done or whatever. But how's that going to play out in her mind? I mean, that's a question. How's that going to play out when you get an offer and it doesn't appraise? What's the game plan there? Yeah. She should have thought that if she knows she's listing it way too high, she should have a plan B. And maybe that's, well, I'll drop it later, but I don't want to now type of thing.
Yeah. So the problem that we had, and I talked to her about that when I was walking through the house with her the first time. And I told her, I says, you know, you might be a little bit on the high side, and it's going to probably appraise a little bit lower. And she's like, yeah, but when I bought the house, and this is what y'all mentioned in one of the other meetings, that if they do something, then they kind of think the buyer's going to do the same thing. And that's exactly what happened with her. She said, well, when I bought the house, there was lots of people doing bidding wars, and I just came up with extra capital and paid over and above what the appraisal was. But as we were walking through the house, she kept saying, oh, this is a starter home. This is a starter home. And so finally I said, well, think about somebody that's buying the house as a starter home. They have small kids, right? She's like, yeah. And I said, so those small kids, you know, that their means tend to be a little bit tighter. Where you were in another situation, you had capital, so you could bid everybody else out and win the house. I said, but people that's starting you know, doing a starter home, they don't have extra capital to buy a house over and above what the appraisal is. They're getting financed for the whole thing through the bank. And then she didn't say anything else about it. So I think there was a couple times I kind of gave her that food for thought, but I don't know, maybe I don't know. I think sometimes my personality might be a little bit too curt.
Well, I wouldn't necessarily think you did anything wrong or make that assumption and beat yourself up on that, because sometimes agents want a listing so bad, they'll go in and agree with everything the seller does or says, right? The list price, I'm going to list it for $500, whatever. They want a sign in the yard. They want something to market, and they don't have some of the strategies that Eric's teaching you on doing open houses and all this other kind of stuff. There's ways to generate business. Our training today was awesome, right? On how to find sellers that need to sell and haven't made up their mind to sell yet, but now you help them solve a problem. So I wouldn't assume that it was just like, what did she do right? She could have done everything wrong just to get the listing. Because I've seen that a lot. They're, you know, look at the BAC they're offering, look at the list price, kind of just for your own. I love that the way you're analyzing the things so you can learn from it. So still do that, but don't make the assumption that you did anything wrong, because what you're telling me sounds like, you know, you built good rapport, and it should have been something that if she was ready to list and be realistic with somebody that's being transparent with them and trying to help them in the transaction, you would have got it. But if she just wants a yes man, then you're not that. So.
Right. Okay. Thank you for that feedback. Appreciate it.
Mm-hmm.
One thing that Jeff says a lot that I have started using that I really, really like is when he talks to a seller, he says, my job is to sell your house twice. We want to create so much value in the home, and your goal is to net more money. It's not necessarily to sell it for a certain price. It's for you to net more money. So we have to create value in your house. And that's what the staging, the consult, the photos, the tour, the open house, the strategy of listing on a Thursday and preparing your home for a listing, all of that builds up to it so I can sell it for the first time. And the second time, we sell it, we're selling it to the appraiser, right? And that's part of that presentation process. And hopefully you do get a couple multiple offers, so you can put on the MLS, multiple offer situation, backup only, because the appraisers look at that MLS sheet and you're selling it to the appraiser as well as that first buyer. So probably doesn't apply to your situation, but it just reminded me of that I really like that approach that Jeff has on that. And
it kind of does apply to that, because that's part of the conversation with a for sale by owner or a potential listing or whatever. You're kind of explaining the process. And I like to separate the mindset of the seller and the buyer, because I'm telling my seller or potential seller, you know, you bought this home, you loved it, you raised your kids here, whatever. That's emotional, right? You've got memories, you've got all this stuff. Now I need you to think like an investor. We need to start talking in terms like return on investment. This is now a product. So you have to detach yourself emotionally from this, because we're merchandising and presenting and trying to sell a product for top dollar. Now on the buying side, we want to elicit emotion. And I use the word perceived value a lot, because you can do simple things that an appraiser is not going to give you much value, but the perceived value in the eyes of the buyer is double what it cost you in effort to spruce that house up, or to do get rid of the punch list and paint it, stage it, declutter it. All that stuff pays in dividends. So if you can separate those mindsets, you can talk to them. Well, for my personality, I like to be just blunt. It's like, this is the way it is. It's not really open for debate, and I'm not like iffy. Well, we could try that, you know. It's like, no, I want them to think like an investor, and I want to increase their ROI. That's my job for them, and I'm going to protect them in the transaction. But the buyer, I want them to perceive the value as greater than it really is, and it seems to work.
Like you said, that's what I was trying to say. Thank you. That was perfect.
Ditto that. Who else has questions?
I do.
Dante.
Hey, so do you guys have a company called Rex Homes or Rex Real Estate in Utah?
Rest?
Rex, R-E-X.
Oh, Rex?
I don't think so.
No.
Doesn't sound familiar to me.
So you might have a similar brokerage model, but I don't know, I think they've only been around in Oregon for 2 or 3 years. But anywho, they don't advertise on the MLS. They only advertise on Zillow. They promote a full listing service, but really not. And they don't pay buyer's agent commission, right? So it's very tricky. Their homes do definitely sit on the market longer because buyer's agents don't want to show their homes. It's a little different than a for sale by owner, because a for sale by owner, you could try to negotiate with the seller to pay commissions. But in this situation, you can't even talk to the seller because they are technically represented. So anyways, one of my buyers just pulled up a Rex home that was advertised on Zillow today. And so I had to explain, and I'm like, well, this is how it works. They don't sell buyers, they don't pay buyer agent commission. So in this instance, we could talk about you paying my commission. I am here to help you and serve you, but the situation is different, right? But it's always a very awkward conversation because it's not typical.
Mm.
Well, and I wouldn't really say, I understand that model, but I wouldn't really or state that they don't pay the commission, but they're not offering one. So to me, it all comes down to the net to the seller. Mm-hmm. And the purchase price to the buyer. So whatever's in there commission wise is irrelevant because the seller wants a certain net. They're saying they won't pay a commission because they want a certain net. But in our market, like I took Sydney out the other day and we were competing against 12 other offers the first day on the market, and it got bid up $30,000. Mm-hmm. A $385,000 listing got bid up to $415,000 with no concessions. So the list price is literally just enough to get it on your radar. Okay. So now your buyer has to decide what it's worth to them based on what else they could buy, what else is available, their timing, all those things come into factor. So if they're willing to pay a little bit more so that they can cover your commission because it's worth it to them, mm-hmm. That's why in our market anyway, people are throwing $30,000 more at a 385 list, is because it's the best thing in the price range on the market today, and they want to lock in their interest rates and they want to move. So if they can pull off the appraisal and the loan and buy it, they're willing to pay that. So,
but I would still need to structure it that way, right? For let's say they fell in love with a home and we offered 2.5 or 3% more to cover buyer's agent commission. I would still need to structure it as if that money comes out of the buyer's financing.
It's part of your offer, right? So you don't even necessarily have to call it a buyer's agent commission. You could just ask them to cover closing costs. Okay, you've got a buyer broker agreement with your buyer. The seller doesn't even have to be privy to what your guys' arrangement is. You might be doing it for free for a relative and they're offering you 3%. You don't tell them that, right? So buyer's agent commission that they're going to have to pay you out of their pocket becomes a closing cost. So if you word your clause right, closing costs to be applied at buyer's discretion, it doesn't have to be loan fees. It's a closing cost. So typically people think of appraisal and processing, lender's policy of title insurance, and all those lender fees are closing costs. But let's say just 1% is BAC for you. Mm-hmm. I don't do this, but say they're only offering you 2, your agreement's 3, 2 is going to be paid for by the seller. You could add 1% to the closing cost of the buyer, so they could pay for it at settlement. However, the closing costs are paid for as a concession from the seller or not, because the buyer is going to have to come in with their own closing costs over and above their down payment if they don't get a concession from the seller. So that's one way, just kind of massage it around. You want to get paid, how you get paid, you know, you can word it a little bit different. You could offer them, say, 2 or 3% more than they're asking and ask for a concession for closing costs. Maybe your buyer's already prepared to pay their lender fees, and now that closing cost in your offer becomes your commission.
Okay.
Just a brainstorm.
Cool. Thank you.
I think that's a really good thought. I couldn't have thought of a better idea. I think it's really good.
You know, you've mentioned that way before, but I didn't catch it till this time that our fees are part of the closing costs. I didn't realize it till you worded it that way. So that's kind of cool. So it's just about rewriting the contract in a way that the closing costs are distributed to me through.
Right.
Yeah.
It's just more acceptable that the seller is paying your commission. It's just not as common that they're always going to pay the closing costs. And in our market today, that's the first thing that a lot of buyers are withholding, asking for, right? Ooh, I'm not going to ask for a home warranty. I'm not going to ask for closing costs. I got to make my offer as good as it can be to compete against the other offers. When the market shifts, it's going to be a whole game. But right now, you're just like, let's make it clean. Let's make it fast. Let's make it an easy yes, right? Start throwing concessions in, even if you're bidding it up. Now, if the seller is concerned about the appraisal and they have to lower the price, they're going to assume you still need those closing costs. So now they're going to deduct those as well. So you're competing against somebody not asking for the closing costs, and they only have to come down to meet the appraisal, and this person doesn't need closing costs. They're going to win. If you're putting an offer on my listing, that one's going to win over the closing cost one.
Yeah, I think my challenge is just I want to be super transparent with the buyer, with my client, so they fully understand when they get those estimated closing costs and then those final closing costs of what they're paying for, that I didn't slip anything under the radar, right?
Absolutely. That's a discussion with your buyer. I'm saying you don't need to discuss with the seller what the buyer closing costs are going to be applied towards. So if you get a concession from the seller to pay a closing cost, which is actually your commission, of course, yeah, you're totally going to have that conversation. It's like, hey, they're not going to pay me, so I'm going to be tricky. We're going to do it this way. And if they want the house at that price and they know that you've been working hard for them and you deserve that commission anyway, and you're now finding a way to get it paid, you know, then they're going to be happy. Just, yeah, totally be transparent with them for sure.
All right. Awesome. Thank you.
Jeff, that kind of brings up another thought, that just kind of discussions I've had with buyers too about closing costs, kind of when you're in a different market, where if it's a seller's market and sometimes you're competing against other offers out there, and if the buyer has the ability not to ask for closing costs, it makes their offer much more attractive. And when they say, well, my friend had someone pay the seller paid their closing costs, why would I not have the seller pay mine? I feel like I'm getting gypped because I'm not getting those seller paid closing costs. And it's kind of a funny thing, because in my opinion, the buyer always pays the closing costs, right? Because if you take a simple number of 100,000 purchase price on a house, and you make an offer that the seller's going to pay $3,000 closing costs on a $100,000 property, the seller's netting $97,000. Wouldn't they have just taken $97,000 with no closing costs? Of course, it's the same net, but the buyer's getting a loan for $100,000, so they don't have to write a check for $3,000 at closing for their own closing costs. So the buyer's paying their own closing costs; they're just wrapping it in a loan.
But what they have to understand, and this is part of the transparency for them, Shante, is if they're offering 100 and asking for 3,000 in closing costs, and they're competing against an offer, in Eric's example, at 97, that's the same net for the seller. But in our market where we're afraid it might not appraise for over 90, that's where the 100 loses out asking for the 3, because that difference and that iffiness and who's going to contribute what if the appraisal becomes an issue. So yeah, what you said is exactly right, but they have to also consider how they're going to stack up net wise based on the appraisal too. Yeah,
for sure. But I've never even thought about it in that scenario. But if you're showing that same $100,000 house and there's a 3% BAC, and they take, 97, for example, couldn't you just take say, I'm just going to do this one for free and not charge BAC to get that $3,000 discount, right? It's kind of the same thing. So, I mean, in a way, that buyer commission is still wrapped into what the seller nets.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So
whether they agreed to it or not, that's the point, is they're saying, I'm not paying a commission. It's like, really? They're concerned about their net. That's why if you give them the right offer and they're netting what they want to net, they are paying your commission.
Right. So the buyer's really paying the commission, because if you say, hey, seller, I know you won't take any less than 100,000, but if I take off my 3% BAC, will you sell it for 97? I'm going to do it for free. It's like, yeah, sure. Of course. There's it's the same net to them. So in a way, that buyer's commission is wrapped into that purchase price for the buyer, and it's financed in similar to closing costs.
You can argue it either way. The seller's paying for the commission because it's coming off of the gross and reducing their net. The buyer's paying for both commissions because it's rolled into the purchase price. They're both right.
Right. Yeah. So it's a tricky situation, and you don't want to get that deep with a buyer in that situation, Shantae, but it really is the net to the seller and the closing costs.
And you can massage it a little bit too. If you've got an agreement with them to do a 3%, maybe you could say, hey, since this is a home you really, really love, and you don't even have to have the conversation until you show it to them. Just go show it to them. They might not even like it. So show them the house and then just say, hey, you love it. I want to make it happen for you. And you can be done. Maybe you do reduce it from 3 to 2 or to 2.5 and say, this is how we can finagle our offer to present it to make everybody happy, and just talk it out with them. But it might not even be an issue if you haven't showed it to them yet.
Yeah, we, I did already tell them, at least in email today, but we don't have a universal buyer's agreement in Oregon either. Only we have a buyer's agreement specific to properties. So there's not a general one anyways. The same buyer could talk to 20 different agents and see who they like better. But it's all about being the best you can be and building that relationship, right? So it works for me and my personal drive anyways. It's just an interesting difference.
Yeah, but you're exactly right. Some agents aren't even going to show that house because of the way it's being presented for the buyer's agent. I'm just of the belief I'm going to show them anything they're interested in.
It's the right thing to do for their client.
It'll work out. Cool.
Interesting. That's an interesting situation too. Gets the brain flowing a little bit on how to fix that, for sure.
Yeah, you got to be creative sometimes.
Yeah. Well, that was good. I think we went over some stuff for sure. Hopefully.
Yeah, I appreciate you guys jumping on.
Yeah.
Does anybody else in the group belong to multiple MLS, or am I the only one with that KV Core issue?
I don't think any of us do. I know I've got a gal down in St. George, Southern Utah, that is in 2 MLSs down there. And I'm not sure how she handles the KV Core thing. I'll have to ask her.
Well, Eric, bless his soul, has been helping me left and right on that one. That has been my only hurdle with EXP so far.
Yeah, it's been a challenge for sure. So
have you made any headway?
Yeah. We're getting closer. I might have to call Ken in and say, buddy, I need your help tomorrow. Shut everything down. I'm coming in. We need to fix this.
Yeah. Well, we're all lucky to have Eric. I'll tell you that.
Thank you.
All right, guys, if there's no more questions, we'll call it.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
Have a good night.
All right.
Appreciate all of you.
Thanks. Good night.
See you guys.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Hey, Jeff.
Yeah.
Who is it that has that second MLS down? Is that
Heidi?
Heidi does?
Heidi. So she's on the, what's the one in St. George? Is it Washington? Wasatch? Not Wasatch.
Washington.
Washington. And then we had a hard time getting Rick to even open up and get EXP to join the Iron County, was it, Sid?
So small.
So it's a
Yeah.
small one, but it's geographically, she works that area. They just have their own MLS, which I think is stupid. We've got the Wasatch Front that covers the whole state. And then down there where she is, she's got 2 small ones covering her area. That's not Wasatch Front.
Yeah.
So yeah, she was able to join that MLS. As far as the KV Core integration, I don't know that she has done anything with that.
I'll reach out to her.
Okay, yeah, it's Heidi.
Yeah. Okay.
All right, cool.
Thanks, guys. I'm gonna work on.
Have a good night, guys. Thank you, Eric.
Oh no, you pull a baby up as I'm turning on.
Aw.
You wanted to say hi to Papa.
Laura, hi baby.
Look, he's right there.
Baby.
Yeah. She could hear your voice and she was going nuts.
Hi, sweetie.
Hey, Papa, right there.
I'm right here.
She's just staring. Well, I love you guys. Bye.
Oh, thanks for that. Okay. Bye.
Bye.
Good.